Dwight L. Moody, God's Man.
Betsy Moody moved a pot of beans toward the back of the stove and set the frying pan on the fire. Then she opened the oven door and shoved in a large pan of potatoes. Picking up the empty pail, she went out to the well in the yard. After lowering the bucket, she pulled it to the top, now brimful of cold water, unhooked it, and carried it into the house. It had been a busy day for Betsy there in her New England home on the outskirts of the village of Northfield, Massachusetts. How could it be otherwise with 6 children, the eldest only 11? The Moodys were fortunate to have a large garden. The 2 older boys had been out there all afternoon hoeing the long rows of corn. Betsy thought of her husband, Edwin, who was laying bricks in the village. Work was scarce all over the United States that summer of 1837. Mr. Moody, a kind, generous man, and a good workman, earned fair wages. But the Depression had been getting worse, and there was always the danger that he might lose his job and join the thousands of unemployed. The sun was now touching the horizon. From the kitchen, Betsy could see little Anne playing in the yard. Baby Dwight lay cooing in the large wooden cradle in the corner of the kitchen.
Anne? Anne?
Yes, Mother.
Run, dear, and greet your father. He should be coming soon. You can wait for him under the shade of the beech tree at the turn of the road.
All right, Mother.
Well, everything's all ready. I wonder what's keeping Edwin so long tonight. I'd better leave the dinner on the stove until he comes. It'll stay warm all right, I think. Baby, darling, is my little Dwight feeling neglected? Oh, you are you? Well, come on, then. There. Let's go out on the porch. It should be cooler than this hot kitchen. That's a sweet boy. We'll rock a while. I think you'll be happier out here. Yes, I do.
Sitting there in that rocking chair as the twilight fell, did Betsy Moody dream that in the years to come, this little boy she held would be famous, and that his name would be spoken by millions? Well, whether she did or not, God had a great work mapped out for little Dwight, a work that would take him all over the world with a message for lost sinners everywhere.
I wonder why your father is so late tonight. And by this time, your brothers must be tired. They've worked in the garden all afternoon. So Mother is going to ring the bell for them to come to the house.
Supper ready, Mother?
Yes, son, it's ready, but your father's not come yet. He should be here soon. You boys can get washed up.
All right, Mother.
Annie, didn't you see any sign of your father?
No, Mother.
It was almost dark before they saw Father coming. Walking slowly, with shoulders bent and head bowed, he turned in at the gate, silently climbed the steps, stumbled into the house, and collapsed into his favorite chair.
What's wrong, my dear Edwin?
We're in great trouble, and I see no way out. No way out.
You've lost your job? Oh, don't worry about that, for I'm sure you can find another.
Oh, no, dear Betsy. I haven't lost my job.
Well, if you haven't lost your job, what then?
Well, our neighbor Yancey has gone bankrupt. His creditors will come tomorrow and take everything he has.
Oh, that's terrible, just terrible. But, Edwin, how does that affect us?
Our mortgage, Betsy. Yancey holds the mortgage on this house. Now the mortgage will fall into the hands of someone else who may demand payment in full immediately. And I haven't the money.
Who will get the mortgage?
I'm not sure yet, but I hear that Ezra Purple is the most likely one.
That will be bad. He is the most grasping man in Northfield. Why don't you go and see John Belden? You borrowed money and put this mortgage on our house in order to help him. Surely he will repay you when he learns of your difficulty.
Well, John would help me if he could, but he lost everything he owned when the bank closed, and he's penniless.
And our future does look dark indeed.
True. All too true. But let's not worry the children with our troubles. So long as I have work, I'll continue to meet the payments.
Edwin Moody's family gathered around the table, and the father gave thanks for the wholesome food. After supper, by the light of the kerosene lamp, Father read words of strength and comfort from the big family Bible. Edwin Moody was right about the mortgage. It fell into the hands of Ezra Purple, and a few days later,
Mr. Purple, there is no possible way that I can pay off the mortgage in full. However, I have a steady job and will faithfully make the payments each month. I should be able to have the entire bill paid up within 5 years.
All right. All right. But mind you don't fail. Because I'm telling you, Edwin Moody, if you get behind one payment, I'll take your house before a cat can wash its whiskers.
Edwin knew that Ezra Purple meant every word, and it was with deep concern that he watched the old man stride off down the road. The days, weeks, and months passed. When little Dwight was a year old, baby Warren was born, the 7th child. The long Depression years slowly passed, and better times came. But with so many children to feed and clothe, it was impossible for the hard-working father to earn enough to completely pay off the mortgage. The debt hung like a dark cloud over the family, ever threatening to sweep away their home. One beautiful May morning, Edwin Moody set out for work. He was to lay stone in the village. He had not been busy long when, on lifting a particularly heavy stone, he felt a sudden stabbing pain in his side. He dropped the stone quickly, then found that he could not straighten himself up. Painfully, he made his way toward home, groaning in agony. Betsy saw him staggering home and ran to help him into the house and onto the bed. For a few minutes, he lay on the bed, his pain slightly eased. Then it returned with tenfold fury. Edwin slid out of bed and onto his knees to pray. Suddenly, he uttered a shuddering groan, then fell forward, dead. Betsy Moody was left alone with 7 children and a mortgage on her home. White-faced and stunned, she sent the oldest boy running for the neighbor.
Oh, you poor, poor dear. What comfort is there for a widow? At least Edwin's troubles are over, and he will never suffer again.
But my troubles are just beginning. A mortgaged house, 7 children, and another baby soon to be born.
Soon the old iron bell in the Northfield meeting house began to toll. Its 41 strokes, pealing out over the quiet valley, told one and all that Mrs. Moody was a widow. The villagers flocked to her to express their sympathy, many bringing gifts of food and clothing. A month later, the last children of Edwin and Betsy Moody were born. Children Yes, not one, but twins. It almost staggered Betsy to think of facing the future with 9 mouths to feed. Then one morning, while still in bed recovering from the birth of the twins, she heard a horse and wagon drive in. 3 men climbed out, walked up to the door, knocked, and then entered the house without waiting to be invited in.
Mrs. Moody, I have come for the deed to this house and farm. As you know, I hold the mortgage on it, and I intend to foreclose. You have no husband now, and you have made no payment for 6 weeks. Where is the title, woman? You can sign the property over to me in the presence of these witnesses.
No. No, Ezra Purple. You shall not have the title to this house and land. Oh, yes, I knew you would come. There is no pity or mercy in your heart, only greed. Well, you listen to me. I suppose you think I am just a stupid, uneducated woman. Maybe I am, but, Mr. Purple, I do know that the law of Massachusetts does not permit a creditor to take this house from a widow.
All right. So I can't take your house and land. Well, that does not prevent me from taking everything in the house. And that's just exactly what I shall do. Now, you fellas, start moving this furniture out. Start in the kitchen. Yes, sir. Well, don't just stand there. Get moving.
The stove was loaded on the wagon first, then the table, chairs, stools, pots, pans, dishes, and even the spinning wheel on which the widow spun cloth for her children's clothing. All the food in the cupboards was seized. Next, they went to the barn and removed all farm implements and tools. Then to the woodshed and carried away every stick of wood. While this was going on, the oldest boys had come up from their work in the field to see who might be visiting their mother. With horror and dismay, they watched their possessions being carried away. It was truly a desolate homestead that Ezra Purple left behind that summer day, but the neighbors saw too, and a wave of sympathy swept through the community. Before nightfall, many of the neighbors had visited the Moody home, bringing food, clothing, and furniture. That night, long after the children fell asleep, "Oh, God, what shall I do? What shall I do? Send me some guidance, some assurance that I shall not be alone in the struggle." Betsy Moody opened her Bible to the 49th chapter of Jeremiah, and her eyes fell on the 11th verse. "Thy fatherless children I will preserve them alive. Let thy widows trust in me." Oh, thank you, dear God, thank you. I will simply trust in your promises and rest in your love. The problem that now faced Betsy Moody was how to hold her family together, as well as feed, clothe, and educate them. She hoped that by all working together they could produce enough food from the farm to carry them through the winter. "Now that the babies are asleep, I want the rest of you children to come sit at the table with me. We're going to have a family council."
All right, Mother. Yes, Mother.
As you children know already, our farmland is not very good. Too many rocks and poor soil. I had hoped that somehow we could grow enough food to live off of for the winter. But I realize now we can't.
What are we going to do, Mama?
There's only one solution as I can see it. Edwin, you and the older boys are going to have to board out with some of our neighbors. You will help them with farm chores in return for your room and board. You will work for them Monday through Saturdays. and come home to spend Sundays.
Oh, Mother, do we have to leave home? Please don't make us. We'll work harder on our farm. We'll make things grow. You'll see.
No, Edwin, I'm sorry. There just isn't any other way. We all can't live off this farm. I don't like it any better than you do, son. But I'm afraid we have no choice.
Reluctantly, the boys accepted the arrangement. Soon they were setting off in all directions very early every Monday morning. Dwight was still too young for this, but even he did his part. He took his first paying job when he was only 7 years old. For driving a neighbor's cows to pasture on a nearby mountain and bringing them back each evening, he was paid 1 cent a day. How proud he felt as he turned those hard-earned pennies over to his mother. Saturday evening found all the older Moody children back at home with their mother, and each child duly bathed in the old metal tub. Then on Sunday morning,
Now, children, no playing on your way through the woods. You march right along. I want you to be in Sunday school on time.
Yes,
Yes,
Mother.
And you carry your shoes and socks until you get to the clearing by the church. We don't want those shoes to wear out any sooner than they have to.
Mama, I wish you'd go with us. Please, Mama?
Not this time, Ann. Hurry along now, or you'll be late.
Yes, Mama.
What's the matter with you, Ann? Don't you know that Mama can't go with us to church?
But why not, Edwin?
Because, silly girl, she doesn't have a decent dress to wear to church.
young Edwin was right. Since all the money that came into Betsy's hands was required to provide food and clothing for her children, she could spend almost nothing on herself. For years she was unable to attend church, not having suitable clothing to wear. And in spite of all her efforts, there were times when Betsy Moody and her family tasted the bitterness of utter poverty, with the cupboard bare and the woodshed empty. One bitterly cold morning, while the children were in bed in order to keep warm until the very last minute before they must get dressed and hurry away to school, Dwight heard a sleigh drive into the yard. Soon he heard the sound of wood being chopped. And presently, Uncle Cyrus entered the house, carrying in the largest armload of wood the boy had ever seen. Home would be warm again. One Saturday night, when Dwight was 10 years old, his brother Edwin arrived after a 13-mile walk from Greenfield Village.
Hello, everyone. I'm home.
Edwin, dear, you must be tired. Come, sit down. I'll bring you some supper.
Thank you, Mother.
Did you have a good week, son?
Oh, I guess so, Mother. By the way, I found a place for Dwight.
A place for me? But I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to stay home and help Mother.
Where is this place, Edwin?
Some old folks living near Greenfield need a boy to do their chores. They can't pay him any cash, but they can give him his room and board.
I'm not going. Who wants to live with some old man and woman? Oh, please, Mother. Please don't make me go. I want to stay here with you.
I'm afraid there is no other way, Dwight. I don't see how I can find food for the rest of this winter. And this will mean one less plate on the table to fill. I don't like it, but what else can we do?
All right, Mother, if I have to.
So, on a cold Monday morning, Dwight and his brother waved goodbye to their mother and the other children and set out to walk 13 miles over the frozen ground to Greenfield. Edwin took Dwight to the farm where he was to work, and there left him, homesick and lonesome. The old man was cross and had no sympathy with boys, and his wife was even worse. Dwight's one consolation was that he and Edwin were in the same neighborhood and could see each other occasionally during the week. Edwin Moody's children never go back on their word, Betsy reminded her boys again and again. Once when Dwight was hired out to work for a farmer for his board and room, he found much that did not please him. One December morning, his mother saw him trudging along the road toward home. She walked out to meet him.
Why, Dwight, what are you doing here? Won't the farmer keep you any longer?
Yes, he'll keep me, but I'm not going to stay there one more day. Do you know what they give me to eat?
No, son, I don't. But what has that got to do with your coming home?
Plenty. For 19 days I've been given cornmeal, porridge, and milk 3 times a day.
Is that all you get?
Well, no. Once in a while they give me some crusts of bread that are too hard for them to chew.
Is there enough porridge to satisfy your hunger? Do you get all you can eat?
Yes, but...
That's all I wanted to know. You will go right back to the farm and work until your time is up.
And back to the farm Dwight Moody went to eat more cornmeal porridge. But life was not all work for Dwight and his brothers. There were long hikes in the hills occasionally and swims in the river. There were rough and even dangerous games of follow the leader among the boys of the community, and sometimes Dwight led the boys into pranks that brought stern rebuke and even punishment from the adults. One of Dwight's teachers was a stern, severe man who believed he could teach the boys only by continually whipping them, and Dwight received his share. But the boys were more than a match for this teacher, and at the end of the spring term he resigned. In the fall, the students were surprised to see a lady take charge of the school. On opening day, she announced that she intended to rule with love. She did not plan to whip anyone. Oh, the boys thought this would be fun. For a few days, they made no trouble, and this gave them time to discover that she was an excellent teacher. One day, Dwight deliberately broke a rule, wishing to see what the teacher would do. Quietly, she requested him to remain in the room after the others had gone. Dwight winked at the boys as they filed past, bracing himself for the punishment he felt sure was coming. But instead of getting a stick, she came and sat down by him.
Dwight, there's something I want you to understand. I love you. I love each one of my students. I will not whip any one of you. If I cannot teach without whipping, I will resign. I'm sorry about what you did today, and I know you are too. And I hope when you say your prayers tonight, you will ask God's help and forgiveness. I need you to be one of my strong helpers in the classroom. Think it over, will you?
Dwight was completely won over. In fact, if any other boy gave the teacher trouble, he lit into him with both fists. Only when the teacher seized Dwight's arm would he stop pounding the troublemaker. Yet the love of mischief was strong in Dwight, and this led him into many escapades. One summer, he was helping a farmer bring in the hay. The man was driving the heavy-laden wagon. Becoming thirsty, he asked Dwight to fetch him the jug of cider. Dwight handed it up. The farmer dropped the reins and lifted the jug to his mouth. At that moment, Dwight threw an apple at the horse. The animal leaped forward. The farmer turned a somersault, the jug broke, and within a very few minutes, Dwight was unemployed.
Mother, we got a letter from Isaiah. He found a job in Clinton.
Oh, Dwight, that's wonderful.
Here, he sent you some money from his first paycheck.
He's a good son. What kind of a job did he get?
Can you believe it, Mother? Isaiah's a shoe clerk. Oh, Mother, I wish I could go to the city and get a good job like Isaiah.
You mean you want to leave home now, too?
I hate farming, Mother. Hoeing, milking, cutting hay. Sometimes I think I can't stand another day of it.
Well, son, you're still awfully young to leave home. But I suppose if it will make you happy, you can go to Clinton and see if you can find work.
Oh, thank you, Mother. Wait and see. I'll find a good job, too.
And Dwight did find a job in Clinton, addressing labels for a newspaper. The hours were long, the pay small, and the work tiresome. Not used to the arrangement of the city's street addresses, he got the wrong numbers on the labels. There were many complaints, and in the end, he was fired. All through Howell and Greenfield he walked, searching for work. Finding none, he was forced to return home. But the glimpse of the outside world had increased his dissatisfaction. One Thanksgiving Day, his Uncle Samuel traveled by stagecoach from Boston 100 miles away to spend the holiday with his sister, Betsy Moody. How Dwight enjoyed talking to him about the great world beyond the hills.
Uncle Samuel?
Yeah?
Would you give me work in your shoe store if I came to Boston?
Well, Dwight, no. I reckon we wouldn't have a job for you in Boston.
But why not, Uncle Samuel?
Dwight, I know you pretty well. You're bright, you're eager, and you're full of ideas. But I'm sure that if we took you into the store, it wouldn't be long before you'd be trying to tell us how to run our business.
Dwight tried hard to conceal his disappointment. It seemed he was doomed to a life of farm chores. The winter dragged by. Then, early in the spring, Dwight and his brother George were cutting and hauling logs from the slope of a nearby mountain. The work was very hard. Suddenly, Dwight straightened up and announced,
I'm tired of this. I'm not staying around here any longer. I'm going to the city.
But, Dwight, how are you going to get there? Do you have any money for a railroad ticket?
No, I don't. But I'll walk there if I have to.
Here, take this. You'll need it.
Hey, $5. Oh, thank you, brother. I'll repay you. Goodbye, George.
Be careful, son. Life in the city is so different from life here on the farm. And don't forget to write me, dear.
I will, Mother. And I'll send you some money as soon as I can.
Arriving at the depot, Dwight boarded the train for Boston. As quick as that, a new world lay before him. How would the young Dwight Moody adjust to life in the city? How could this young man, with only a 6th grade education, become one of the world's greatest evangelists?
Dwight L. Moody, God's Man.
When Edwin Moody died in 1841 in Northfield, Massachusetts, he left 7 children and a house with a mortgage to his wife Betsy. Twins were born to her the following month. Betsy Moody refused to allow the family to be broken up, although the boys had to leave home during the week to work on nearby farms. Dwight, the 6th child, faithfully worked on the farm until he was 17 years old. Then, deciding he wanted nothing more to do with farming, he left by train to find work in Boston, where he had 2 uncles. Traveling on the Vermont and Massachusetts Railroad, chugging in and out of towns of which he had often heard but never seen, was a thrilling experience to Dwight Moody that spring day in 1854. When the train pulled into the Boston terminal, there was no one to meet him, for it was only the day before he had decided to quit the farm, and no one knew of his coming. Fortunately, he had the address of his Uncle Lemuel.
Dwight Moody, whatever are you doing in Boston? Come in.
Thank you, Uncle Lemuel.
I hope you haven't brought bad news from Betsy.
No, Uncle Lemuel. Everything is all right on the farm. I've come here to find work.
Find work? Well, my boy, here, have a chair. Do you really think you'll find a job here when there are hundreds of men tramping the streets every day with no employment?
Uncle, I realize that. But surely there must be some employer in Boston who'll give me a chance to show what I can do.
Well, why don't you go down and see your Uncle Samuel? He has a large boot and shoe store.
I don't think he wants me unless he's changed his mind about me since he was with us last Thanksgiving. If I can stay with you for a few days, Uncle Lemuel, I'm sure I can find some kind of work.
Of course you can stay with us, my boy. And you must be very hungry. Martha will fix you a good hot meal. Martha, see if you can't find something for this boy.
That same afternoon, Dwight set out on his urgent errand. For 2 days he walked the streets of Boston, knocking at scores of doors, but to no avail. There seemed to be no work in Boston for young Dwight Moody. The discouraged lad returned to his uncle's house.
Well, Dwight, what next?
I think I'll go to New York. They say there are many opportunities there.
Have you enough money to pay your way?
No, Uncle, but I think I can go down to the docks and find a ship that will take me to New York if I can work my way.
Well, now, I don't think you should do that. I saw Samuel today, and I talked to him about you. Perhaps you should go and see him in the morning.
So, you came to Boston in spite of my warning last fall.
Yes, Uncle Samuel, I thought
Samuel tells me that you've not found work.
Well, no, not yet.
Well, now, if you're willing to abide by certain conditions, which I will explain, I'm prepared to give you a try in my store.
Oh, Uncle Samuel, that's so good of you. I'll do anything you say. Just give me a chance. I'm sure I can sell shoes. I'll do my very best.
Now, wait a minute. Don't be too hasty. Boston people don't like strangers who try and turn the world upside down. Now, here are the conditions. First of all, you must not try to run this store. Tell me how to run it. Second, you must promise to go to Sunday school and church every week. Last, you must agree never to enter a place of which your mother would not approve. Now, you think this over during the weekend. Come back Monday with your answer.
Oh, that's all right, Uncle. I don't need any time. I accept your conditions, and I'd like to begin work immediately.
Well. Oh, there's one other point I forgot to mention. You must find a respectable boarding house in which to live. I will pay you a salary of $15 a month.
Dear Mother, I've been in Boston only a month and feel quite at home. I've found a room at Mr. Levy Bowers. Mr. Bowers is a deacon in the Mount Vernon Congregational Church, which I am also attending. I found that I really know very little about the Bible, so I've joined a Sunday school class taught by Mr. Edward Kimball. I still have a very hard time looking up the text in the Bible, and when Mr. Kimball asks me to read out loud, I feel very uncomfortable. But I am trying very hard and have promised myself never to go to bed at night before reading at least 2 chapters. I am enclosing a little money. I will send more next month. Hope this finds you and the children well.
His work at the store was much more satisfactory. At least he thought so. Never was there such an eager salesman.
How was our new shoe salesman doing, Samuel?
Well, he's already managed to get all my other clerks completely frustrated.
What do you mean? What's Dwight done?
Well, first of all, he always stations himself nearest the door. When a customer comes in, he's right by his side, guiding him to a chair and offering his services.
What's wrong with that?
Oh, you've heard nothing yet. On days when business is slow, he'll take a pair of shoes in each hand, step outside the store, and urge passers-by to compare them with any other shoes in Boston for price and style. and then invites them to come in and try 'em on.
He sounds like a very enterprising young
Oh,
man.
he definitely is. He's selling more shoes than all my other clerks combined. I gave him a raise from $15 to $20 a month.
That's wonderful. You must be very proud of your nephew.
Oh, he's industrious, all right, but I somehow just do not approve of his methods. In Boston, we just don't do things that way.
Although little money was left after paying his board bill, Dwight faithfully sent what he could to help his struggling mother. Each week, Dwight attended church and Sunday school. Because all respected people in Boston were church members, and because he knew it would please his uncle, young Moody, too, joined the church. But Dwight's Sunday school teacher, Mr. Kimball, was troubled. Here was a fine young man, completely honest, who didn't gamble or drink, yet knew nothing of the joy that comes from having Jesus as his personal friend. Someone should speak to Dwight about this. For weeks, Mr. Kimball thought it over, trying to make up his mind what to do about it.
Well, there's just no other way. I'll have to speak to Dwight myself. Should have done it long before this. I'd best go to that shoe store right now, today.
Not stopping to speak to anyone, he pushed through the sales room and into a room at the back where Dwight was wrapping up shoes and putting them into boxes. He put his hand on Dwight's shoulder.
Why, Mr. Kimball. Dwight, you have been on my mind for many weeks. I'm concerned about you, that Jesus gave his life for you, for all of us. He loves you, but Dwight, you must return that love. You must give your life wholly to him. Won't you give him your heart today, this very moment?
Dwight was startled to think that anyone would care about his soul. Because the Holy Spirit had been speaking to him, his heart was ready. There in that dusty back room, he knelt with Mr. Kimball, confessed his sins, and gave his life to God. Mr. Kimball never lost sight of Moody. Years later, after the young man had gone on to become one of the world's greatest preachers, he rejoiced in the part that he had played in starting Dwight on the road to soul winning.
Just suppose I had not spoken to Dwight Moody that afternoon in the shoe store in Boston.
After that, everything seemed different to Dwight Moody. He must now share this wonderful experience with others. Previously, he had not enjoyed attending church. Now he loved it. The tolling of church bells that once annoyed him had now become music to his ears. Though some who attended prayer meeting thought he was too earnest in his newfound faith, Dwight stood time after time to give his testimony and urged those around him to accept Jesus. His mother, brothers, and sisters, too, must hear of the wonderful joy that had come into his heart. How he longed to lead them into the same experience he enjoyed. That very next week, he traveled home to Northfield, but he found them strangely uninterested. Disappointed, he returned to Boston. For 2 years, Moody continued selling shoes, but somehow he never did get along well with Uncle Samuel. Dwight became more and more frustrated and decided to move on. One day, he broke the news to Uncle Samuel.
Well, why should you leave? Haven't I increased your salary?
Yes, Uncle. You've been very good to me and have given me a chance, but I want to do more. Boston is too slow, too afraid to change.
Well, why should we make changes? People are satisfied with the way things are. See,
Seems to me you're ungrateful to leave me when the business is prospering more than ever.
I'm sorry I displease you, Uncle, but I am leaving. Would you do me one last favor?
No.
I'll need a letter of recommendation to take with me.
I shouldn't, you know. I really shouldn't write you one. Oh, well, I'll have it ready for you in the morning.
Thank you, Uncle Sammy.
Young Dwight Moody turned his face westward to that fast-growing, forward-looking city on the shores of Lake Michigan. Preparing to throw himself wholeheartedly into the world of business, he saw no reason why he should not make $100,000. But God had other plans for Dwight Moody in Chicago. Darkness had fallen when the train pulled into the Chicago station. Stiff from 3 days of sitting on the hard benches of the railroad car, Dwight clutched his carpet bag and eagerly walked up the muddy street until he came to a building with a sign announcing rooms for rent. After engaging a room for a week, it did not take him long to prepare for bed. But before dropping off to sleep,
Dear Lord, I thank thee for my safe journey. Guide me, Lord, and show me what thou wouldst have me do. I have given my heart to thee, and may thy will be done in my life.
perhaps he would be farther from his family in Chicago, but he would be as close as ever to God. For 2 days, Moody walked the streets of Chicago looking things over. Since he knew the shoe business better than any other, he stepped into the store of a Mr. Wiseall and requested work, displaying his letter of recommendation.
Excellent. Excellent, Mr. Moody. Sounds like you're just the man I need. At present, I have a traveling shoe salesman position open. Would you be interested?
Yes, I would, sir. When may I begin work?
First thing in the morning. Come into my office and I will show you the sample case you will carry. Now, I shall pay you a beginning salary of $20 a week. If you do well, you can earn more in the future. In a few short weeks, Mr. Moody, you've become one of my top salesmen. From now on, I'm going to put you on a commission basis. The more you sell, the more you can make.
How the sales zoomed then. Within 3 years, Moody was earning $5,000 a year, a small fortune in those days, which he faithfully laid away in the bank after sending generous gifts of cash to his needy mother. Without a doubt, Moody was a born businessman with 2 ambitions: to make $100,000 and to do a work for God. Eventually, he would have to decide which of these 2 ambitions should take first place in his life. In Chicago, Dwight promptly joined the Plymouth Congregational Church, which he attended regularly, giving his testimony whenever he had an opportunity. But some were critical of his enthusiasm. Occasionally, a deacon would quietly take him aside and suggest that it might be well for a young man of only 19 to be quiet in church and listen. Now, in those days, it was the custom to rent a church pew.
That's right, Mr. Moody. A pew rents for $10 a year.
I don't need a whole pew, for I'm alone in Chicago and I have no family.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moody, but we don't rent half or quarter pews.
Very well, but I intend to get my money's worth out of my pew.
The following Sunday,
Who are those 7 young men who came along with Moody this morning?
I don't know. Never seen them before.
But from the looks of them, they never have seen the inside of a church before.
He must have brought them in off the streets.
Dwight soon sought out the treasurer and rented another pew. Within 3 weeks, he had both pews full every Sunday. He rented a 3rd pew, and then a fourth, filling them all with strangers brought in from the city streets. Still, he was not satisfied. One Sunday afternoon, he came upon a small chapel located on North Wells Street. In it, a Sunday school was being conducted for the poor children of the district. Dwight's eyes gleamed. This was the kind of work he wanted to do. Stepping aside, he watched until the meeting was dismissed. To his surprise, there were only a few children. When they had gone, he spoke with the superintendent.
Sir, I should like to teach in your mission.
Excuse me, but I don't think I know your name.
The name is Moody, Dwight Moody.
Oh, well, Mr. Moody, the fact is we'd like to have you, but we are short of scholars. We saw the situation today. 16 teachers and only 13 children. If we gave you a class, some of these teachers would have nothing to do.
Suppose I bring my own children. May I teach them?
Why, certainly, Mr. Moody. That would be perfectly fair.
The next Sunday afternoon, Moody entered the Sunday school, followed by 8 ragged street children, nearly doubling the attendance. Gladly, he shared some of these children with the other teachers. Each Sunday, he brought more and still more. The superintendent and teachers were astonished, then appalled. Soon the little chapel couldn't hold the children who were coming every Sunday. Moody then went straight to the mayor of Chicago.
Mayor Haynes, I need a big place for my Sunday school.
Well, how big a place do you want?
One large enough for at least 1,500 children.
1,500? Well, how many children do you have now?
600, Mr. Mayor, but there'll be more, many more.
I see. Very well. You shall have North Market Hall, but you'll have to equip it yourself.
Soon 12, 13, 1,400 children were in that hall every Sunday afternoon. And when the meetings were over, Mr. Moody would visit in the homes of the children. There he would sit by the sick and the dying, talking to them of Jesus, the Savior who loved them. But he did more than that.
Yes, sir?
Oh, hello, Mr. Moody.
I'd like you to deliver coal to these addresses.
Sure thing, Mr. Moody.
Could you get some out there right away? They have no heat in their homes, and the children are suffering from the cold.
Right away.
Here's my check. I believe that's the right amount.
Yes, sir, Mr. Moody. Thanks again.
Well, look what's coming in the door. Looks like we're getting some business. You better help me.
Ah, say we are. It's Mr. Moody again, I see. I wonder how many children he has with him today.
I don't know. Would you believe I've seen him buy as many as 20 pairs of shoes at one time for his children?
His children?
That's what he calls them. He's the best friend those Chicago street children ever had.
One Thanksgiving Day, he conducted a special service in the hall for the children. They crowded in and all around him. There were no gas lights, just a few flickering candles throwing their faint light about the room. Mr. Moody sat in front, a child on each knee.
I think it would be nice if today we would name a few of our blessings, a few of the things we're thankful for. Now let's see. Who would like to begin? All right, Mary?
I'm thankful for my parents.
Oh, very good, Mary. Reggie?
I'm thankful for all the good food we had today. Yum, yum.
Thanksgiving feasts are wonderful, aren't they? Beth?
I'm glad my mommy is well again.
We're glad too, Beth. Now, what's all the excitement over there? What special thing are you thankful for?
Mr. Moody,
Yes, Jackie?
there's nothing we're so thankful for as you, Mr. Moody.
At that, the whole room full of children cheered and cheered. Their words brought tears to Moody's eyes, for he loved all his children of the streets. There was someone else that won the love of Dwight Moody. Only 2 weeks after his arrival in Chicago, he had wandered into a certain Baptist church to worship. It was during the opening song that he saw her, a lovely girl, sitting demurely by her parents. Something told Moody,
That's the girl for me. Oh, God, keep her lovely and sweet and pure, and may I be worthy of her.
He learned that her name was Emma Revell, and that her father was a businessman. 2 years later, Moody invited Emma to teach in his Sunday school, and she gladly accepted. From then on, they saw much of each other. Before 1860, Moody was giving his weekends to God and working the other days of the week for himself. Yet he was not satisfied. He discussed the problem with Emma. She urged him to make it a matter of prayer. She felt that he would never be happy until he decided to give God all his life, not just the weekends. For Moody, it was a terrible struggle. Then one day early in 1860, while riding the train back to Chicago from Milwaukee, he made the decision. Arriving in Chicago, he went directly to Emma's home.
Oh, Dwight, you've made the right decision. God needs your talent to work for him full time.
Then you will marry me anyway, even though I have nothing to offer you but my love. You're not afraid of what the future might hold.
Dwight, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. You'll be doing God's work, and he will take care of us.
Leaving Emma, Dwight rushed over to the business office and sought out the manager of the company for whom he worked.
Mr. Jacobs, may I see you for a moment?
Why, of course, young man. Come in. Sit down.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. I've come to tell you that I'll not be able to work for you any longer.
Why, Mr. Moody, what do you mean?
I expect to be working for someone else.
Now, Mr. Moody, if someone has offered you better wages or commissions than we are paying you, please tell us. I am sure we can match anything that anyone else can give you.
Not this time, Mr. Jacobs, because from now on I'm going to give God all my time and strength.
And pray tell, what are you going to live on?
I shall be working for God, and he's rich. He's able to supply all my need.
Moody left the factory happier than he had ever been before. The previous year, he had made $5,000 and had $8,000 in his savings account. The year following his decision to work full-time for God, he made $300, and he gave away almost $3,000. In 1861, the Civil War broke over the nation. Some of Moody's friends expected him to join the army and go to fight against the cause of slavery. But Moody was troubled.
There has never been a time in my life when I felt I could take a gun and shoot down a fellow being.
However, he was vitally interested in the war and the brave men who were fighting it. When a large training camp for soldiers was set up in Chicago, Moody visited it regularly, holding meetings with the men, pointing them to Jesus, and giving away thousands of Bibles, Testaments, and hymn books. 12 times he visited areas in which armies were engaged in heavy fighting, witnessing some of the greatest battles of the war. He heard the groans of the wounded and saw men dying. After the battle was over and night had fallen, Moody would hasten from man to man, carrying food and water. His deeds of mercy were distributed equally to the soldiers of both armies. A Confederate general said,
I've seen many a brave man
put in positions of great personal danger, but I've never seen a braver man than Dwight Moody.
When the war was over, Dwight Moody returned to Chicago and to his young bride, Emma. He also returned to his Sunday school work and began holding evangelistic meetings. He met with only one problem. The halls were too small to hold the crowds of people who came to hear him. Finally, he took this problem to his friend Farwell, who had helped him so often in the past. And Mr. Farwell gave him $30,000. Then he visited other wealthy men in Chicago requesting gifts. And so the necessary funds were collected, and by September 29, 1867, the building was ready for dedication. It could seat 3,000 people. It even had an apartment in which the Moody family could live, for there were 2 children now. Then one bitterly cold January night, only 4 months later.
What's that smell? What? It's smoke. Hey, must be a fire. Emma, wake up, dear. Wake up.
What's the matter?
I think the hall is on fire. Hurry, get the blankets for the children. Now, hurry now. I'll go look out in the hall.
Quickly, Mr. Moody walked through the apartment, then opened the door that led into the hall.
Oh, no. The whole building is in flames. Nothing can save it. Emma, are the children ready?
Yes, Dwight. They're well bundled up.
Not a chance. The entire hall is in flames. We'll have to go out the back stairs here. You take the baby. Now there. I'll take little Emma. We better hurry.
Hastily, they made their way down the back staircase, crossed the street, and stood in their nightclothes, mournfully watching the building burn to the ground. Seeing his assistant, Pearson, in the crowd, he called him over to him.
Oh, what a truly sorrowful sight, Mr. Moody. Where are your wife and children?
All right. We're all safe, thank God.
And your personal belongings?
Never mind about that. Here, I've written out a message. I want you to make copies of this and scatter them all over Chicago. See what it says?
Our beautiful house is burned. The noonday prayer meeting will be held at the Clark Street Methodist Church.
A man of lesser faith might have doubted, but not Dwight Moody. His life was totally in God's hands. Without question, he accepted the trials along with the blessings.
Dwight L. Moody, God's Man.
Dwight L. Moody was born in Northfield, Massachusetts in 1837 and lived with his widowed mother and 8 brothers and sisters on the farm until he was 17. After spending 2 years selling shoes for his uncle in Boston, he went to Chicago, where he continued in the shoe business. He proved to be a successful businessman, but in 1860, he quit his $5,000 a year job to become a worker for God among the poor of Chicago. He fostered Sunday schools, then began to preach to large audiences. He was married in 1862, and by 1867, Dwight and Emma Moody had 2 children. At that time, they lived in Farwell Hall, a meeting house he had erected. Then, one January night...
Look! Farwell Hall is in flames! Sound the fire alarm! Hurry! There's not a minute to lose! Have the Moody's gotten out? I don't know. There they are now, coming down the back staircase. Oh, yeah. It looks like they're carrying their children. I'll go see if I can help.
Farwell Hall was burned to the ground, and the Moody's lost all their possessions. Yet the very next morning after the fire,
Oh, whatever will we do now, Mr. Moody?
We must build again. Bigger and better than before.
But how are we ever going to raise all that money again?
I'll tell you how, Pearson. We're going to have a banquet.
A banquet?
A banquet for the most prominent citizens of Chicago. After we fill them with good food, we'll pass around a subscription paper and invite each man present to write down the amount he will pledge toward the new building. You'll see, the money will come in.
Moody was right. Soon the money was flowing in. Within a year, larger crowds than ever were flocking to the new Farwell Hall. There was a well-known infidel in Chicago whom Moody had visited several times, but who had not responded in giving his heart to Jesus. One day his horses ran away, the carriage turned over, and the man was badly hurt. For weeks he lay in bed, sick, depressed, and lonely. He was not sorry when one afternoon the door opened and Dwight Moody walked in. The sick man held out his hand and Moody took it.
I'm glad you came. And Mr. Moody?
I heard the other day your old friend Johnson was converted, so I said to myself, there's hope for you. I went right down to the noon prayer meeting and had them pray for you. Now, don't you see, the Lord has answered our prayers by permitting your buggy to be tipped over, your bones to be broken, and putting you to bed for a while. Now, you've had plenty of time to think of something else besides business. Now, you have time to think of your soul.
Oh, yes, Mr. Moody.
Now, I'm going to kneel right here beside your bed, and we're going to pray for your conversion. First I will pray, and then you may follow. Our dear Father in heaven, we are praying today in the name of Jesus that our friend will give his heart to thee. Take his life and use it for your sake.
Mr. Moody, I've been prayed about and prayed at many times, but no one has ever prayed with me until now. I shall give my life to Christ from this moment on.
Soon 400 men were attending the noon prayer meetings. Every night the hall was packed. Moody never held a meeting without inviting men and women to surrender their lives to Jesus. And he never closed a meeting without inviting anyone who wished to talk with him. Some always did. But one phase of his meetings troubled him.
Pearson, where am I ever going to find a good singer who will give his talent to the Lord's work? If only I were a musician. But as you know, I'm not.
I'm afraid I'll have to agree, sir.
It seems that whoever I have lead the singing pitches the song too high or too low, or else the hymn chosen is one that nobody knows. Not only that, some of the hymns have 7 or 8 verses, which practically puts everyone asleep.
Oh, it is a problem indeed. I only wish I could suggest someone, but I cannot.
But God knew about this problem and was preparing just the helper Moody needed. In 1870, Mr. Moody was a delegate to an international convention in Indianapolis. Another delegate was a Christian gentleman named Ira D. Sankey.
Oh, wonderful. Finally, I'll get to hear the famous Moody preach. It says here that he'll be speaking at the 6 o'clock prayer meeting at the Baptist Church. Oh, I've been waiting for years to hear him.
Bright and early the next morning, Sankey was on his way. Entering the church, he took a seat near the back by a minister friend who leaned over and whispered to him.
Sankey? Yes? The prayers have been so long the people are fidgety, and the singing has been abominable. Won't you start up a good hymn for us, please?
Certainly, I'll be glad to.
There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's babe.
Moody, sitting in the speaker's chair, came to attention. Where was that voice coming from? Clear and true, it had inspired such singing as Moody had never heard from a congregation before. He listened and looked until he believed he had pinned the voice to a stranger sitting near the back. He must meet that man.
And sinners plunged beneath that
At the close of the meeting, Sankey and his friend made their way to the front of the church to meet Mr. Moody. Moody was waiting.
My friend, where are you from?
Well, I live in Pennsylvania.
Are you married?
Yes, and I have 2 children.
What's your business?
I'm an employee of the United States government.
Well, you'll just have to give that up.
What? Give it up? Why should I give it up?
Because I need you, brother. You must come to Chicago and help me with God's work.
But, Mr. Moody, I can't do that. How could I leave my business?
You must. I've been looking for you for 8 years.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Moody, but I would need time to think about this proposal. Besides, I have to talk to my wife.
Of course. Now, sit down, and I will explain why I need you so much.
In a few minutes, Moody told Sankey all about the difficulty in obtaining good song leaders. He begged Sankey to pray much about the matter before making a final decision. He admitted that he could offer only $1,200 a year in salary. The next morning, in Sankey's hotel room...
Mr. Sankey,
Yes?
I have a message for you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Say, dear Mr. Sankey, would you please meet me at 6 p.m. at the corner of 25th and Meridian? Dwight L. Moody. Well, I wonder what this is all about. Then I'll just have to go and see. Mr. Moody, I hope I'm not late.
Not at all. I came a little early because I wanted to borrow this large packing crate from a nearby store. Now, Mr. Sankey, these men are on their way home from work. Climb up on the box and sing something for them.
Sing? Well, all right, if you say so, Mr. Moody.
Must Jesus bear the cross alone, and all the world go
By scores, the people stopped to listen. As soon as the song was finished, Sankey stepped down, and Moody took his place on the box and began to preach the gospel. The people listened with wonder to his powerful words and thrilling message. Then he invited everyone to accompany him to the opera house where he would talk again. Turning to Sankey, he commanded,
Sankey, sing something.
Shall we gather at the river?
When they reached the opera house, they crowded in to hear Moody preach again. Under the influence of the Spirit of God, hearts were touched and many were converted.
Now, do you see why I need you, Mr. Sankey? What an effective team we would make. And please, I need you. Consider my invitation carefully.
Yes, Mr. Moody, I'll think it over and pray that God will help me make the right decision. You'll be hearing from me.
A few weeks passed. Then one morning...
Emma, the postman just delivered a letter from Sankey.
Wonderful. Well, let's hope it's good news. Read it to me, will you?
Dear Mr. Moody, I have carefully weighed your invitation and have sought the advice of many in making my decision. I've been asked many questions such as, how will you ever support your family? What will you do when you retire without a government pension? Of course, I've already asked myself the same questions and many others. Only one man, my pastor, advised me to step out in faith and accept your call. In my heart, I knew this was the decision God would have me make. Therefore, I will be arriving in Chicago on the 18th. My family will follow as soon as I find suitable housing. Sincerely, Ira D. Sankey.
Oh, Dwight, our prayers have been answered.
Yes, Emma, they have. God has sent me his man.
I will get the guest room ready. Mr. Sankey shall stay with us until he finds a house.
The summer of 1871 was very dry. Day after day, the sun blazed down out of a cloudless sky. All who could left the city for cooler spots as the daily temperature soared above the 100 mark. Fall came, but still no rain fell. The prairie was tinder dry. There was fear everywhere. For 5 weeks, Moody's meetings continued in Farwell Hall, wonderfully helped by Sankey. On Sunday evening, October 8th, Moody was preaching to one of the largest congregations he'd ever addressed.
Again, I ask you this question of old. What will you do then with Jesus, which is called Christ? This is life's greatest question. Will you give him your life, your talents? Will you choose Christ?
Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee, O land.
Moody and Sankey followed the people out of the hall, then stood on the steps gazing at the sky. It was growing brighter every minute. The great Chicago fire had begun.
What a dreadful sight. Those tongues of fire reaching for the sky, like the Judgment Day itself.
You know, that fire can't be more than half a mile away. I think I'll walk to the fire and see if I can be of any help. Oh, I'm thankful my family are still in Pennsylvania.
Yes, it's a good thing they are. And I must hurry home to my family right now. Be careful, Sankey.
The fire's getting closer. Only a quarter-mile away. You'd better take your family and flee.
Oh, I'm sure they'll have it put out before long. It won't come this far. We're safe.
With this wind, there's no way they can stop the fire. I urge you to get your family out while you can.
Don't worry, mister. We'll be all right.
Oh, I can't believe it. Everybody I've talked to feels just like that man. People just won't believe what a serious situation this is. I guess there's nothing I can do here. I'm not going to get trapped by this fire. I've got to get back to Farwell and collect my things.
Sankey filled 2 suitcases, then headed toward the shores of Lake Michigan, thinking this would be the safest place. Yet the fire came nearer and nearer.
There. Finally. My, all this water and nothing to drink. And the water near shore is too oily and dirty. That must have been the gasworks. The entire city will be in darkness. I don't like the direction of the wind. It'd be safer out on the lake. I'll just ask that man over there if I can borrow one of these boats tied to the pier. Say there, do you think anyone would mind if I borrowed one of these boats?
Well, go right ahead. Take anything you want, mister. The owners have more important things to think about tonight than their boats.
Sankey jumped into a boat and rowed out into deep water. The strong wind had produced large waves, and Sankey had to be careful not to upset the boat. Moody had made his way back to the attractive home his good friends in Chicago had bought and furnished for him. Neither he nor Emma slept that night.
Dwight, what are those explosions?
They tell me that General Sherman and his soldiers are blowing up buildings that are in the path of the flames, hoping to stop the spread of the fire.
Is it working?
Not so far. The wind is so strong and everything is so dry that the sparks and debris are carried right on.
Do you think it will come our way?
The wind would have to change direction in order for that to happen. Well, we hope it won't. We'll just have to wait and see. Emma, I'm afraid our turn has come. The wind has changed. The fire has even jumped the river. We must leave quickly.
Is there time to get a horse and wagon for some of our possessions?
No, Emma, there isn't. We could put the good silver and a few of your best china pieces in the baby buggy, and don't forget my Bible. I'll get the children ready.
Somehow they made room for baby Willie in the buggy, too. Leading little Emma by the hand, the family left their home.
All right, Emma, let's go. We have a long walk ahead of us. We'll have to make a wide detour around the fire area.
But where are we going, Dwight?
Our friends, the Spaffords, live in the suburbs. They'll make us welcome, I'm sure.
When at last the fire was out, the people began to realize what a terrible calamity it had been. Not only was Farwell Hall gone, but the Illinois Street Church as well, and of course the Moody's home. More than half the city had burned. 150,000 people were homeless, and 250 persons had died in the fire. Moody drove back to look over the ruins of his home. The only complete article he found was little Emma's toy stove. As Moody stood amid the ruins of his home, a friend approached.
Oh, I hear you lost everything. I'm very sorry.
No, thank you, but you understood wrong.
How much have you left?
Well, I can't tell you, but I have a good deal more than I lost.
Yet you can't tell me how much you have.
No, not really.
I didn't know you were that rich.
I suppose you didn't.
What do you mean?
Well, friend, my Bible says, "He that overcometh shall inherit all things."
Moody now became busier than ever. He raised money with which to build a new hall for his meetings. When it was erected, he made the building the headquarters for the distribution of food and clothing. He also built a strong team of evangelists, for he felt the Lord wanted him to take the message to England. Meanwhile, his evangelistic teams would continue with the work which he had begun in Chicago.
Emma, we will leave Chicago for New York next Monday. The Sankeys will be going with us, of course.
Have you bought the train tickets yet?
No, Emma, I haven't. I do not have enough money.
What will we do, Dwight?
We will pray, Emma. Pray for the Lord's guidance. If he wants us to go to England, he will provide the means.
Dwight, our train leaves tomorrow for New York and still no money has come in. Shall we cancel the trip?
No, Ira. If the Lord wants us to work in England, he will send us the money. We will wait and pray.
All right.
A few hours before the time to board the train, Moody's old friend Farwell came to bid him goodbye.
Well, Dwight, may the Lord bless your work in England. Don't forget us here in Chicago. We want you back with us again.
My dear friend, you will not be forgotten, and God's blessings be with you also.
Here, I want you to take this with you. You will need this to meet expenses when you get to England. Farewell, and bon voyage.
$500. I will need it a lot sooner than that, my friend.
On June 7th, 1873, the Moody family and the Sankeys went on board the ship City of Paris. On the 10th day of the voyage, the ship dropped anchor in the harbor of Queenstown, Ireland. After a short layover, the ship set sail for Liverpool. Moody had wired Mr. Bennett of York of his soon arrival. Mr. Bennett had invited Mr. Moody to speak to the Young Men's Christian Association there.
I've a telegram for you, sir.
Fine, thank you. Must be from Bennett confirming our visit to York.
Good. I hope he's prepared everything for our visit.
Oh, I'm afraid he hasn't. Listen to this. What? Everything is so cold and dead in town that it would take at least a month to prepare. You had better not come to York. Well, Mr. Bennett will receive another telegram from me, and it will read, "I will be in York tonight."
Mr. Moody, I didn't think you would come. Didn't you receive my telegram?
Yes, Mr. Bennett, I received your telegram, but somehow I have a feeling that God has work for me to do in York.
Of course, Mr. Moody, but now is not the right time for it. This is a very poor season of the year in which to begin evangelistic meetings. Everyone has gone to the seaside for the summer holiday.
Everybody? How could that be in a city of thousands of people?
Well, then, not quite everybody, but all the upper classes have gone. Only the factory workers and the coal miners and the fishermen remain.
Don't they have souls to be saved?
Well, yes, Mr. Moody, to be sure, but you see, most of them don't ever go to church.
Well, you find me a hall, and we'll see if they will come out to hear an American preacher.
So Mr. Bennett posted notices that read, D.L. Moody of Chicago will preach, and Ira D. Sankey will sing at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, Thursday, and each succeeding evening for 1 week in the Independent Chapel. All are welcome, no collection. At the first meeting, there were less than 50 people in attendance, but the interest grew, and soon the hall became overcrowded. Word went out that Moody was a man with a message. One afternoon, arrangements were made for him to speak in the corn exchange, and more than 1,000 persons crowded in to listen. Though people in England were not familiar with gospel songs, they learned to love such songs as Hold the Fort and Dare to be a Daniel. From York, they went on to Sunderland, England, to hold more meetings. Next came an invitation to hold meetings in Edinburgh and Glasgow, Scotland, where they spent 4 months. God blessed his work, and thousands were converted. Upon his return to America in 1875, Moody found himself famous. His own countrymen flocked in great numbers to hear him. Then one day...
Sankey? Yes? We're going to take our meetings to Northfield, Massachusetts, my hometown.
That sounds like a good idea. Your family and friends will surely welcome you.
Yes, I'm sure they will. But there's one person for whom I have a special burden.
Oh, and who might that be?
My mother. For years, she has belonged to a church that does not believe in Jesus Christ. And for years, I've been praying for her. Now I shall return to Northfield and pray with me that somehow she will receive Christ.
The meetings in Northfield lasted 1 month. Would his mother come? No, she would not. His brothers and sisters attended, but not his mother. But Moody continued to pray for her. Then on the last Sunday of the meetings...
Anne, my daughter, do you think there would be room for me in the wagon this morning?
Why, of course, Mother. We shall be glad to have you go with us.
Moody was thrilled when he saw his mother walk into the meeting. He was inspired to preach the gospel as he had seldom preached it before. At the close of the sermon, he invited those who would accept Jesus to stand for prayer. Betsy Moody, his mother, stood. Her son hardly noticed the 24 others who stood with her. Overwhelmed, he sat down and covered his face with his hands, weeping. He turned to the man who was assisting with the meeting and said,
You pray, brother. I can't.
There was great joy in the Moody home that day. For many years, Moody traveled across America, preaching and holding revival meetings in the great cities of the nation. He spread the good news of salvation in New York, Philadelphia, Washington, Chicago, St. Louis, New Orleans, San Francisco, and many other places. He also helped to establish large schools for boys and girls at Northfield. He opened the famous Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, where many preachers were trained for God. Then in 1892, Moody began to suffer from a sore throat that would not get better. Since he was in London at the time, he looked up Sir Andrew Clark, a famous British specialist. Sir Andrew examined him and then surprised Moody by stating that he also had something wrong with his heart.
How often do you speak?
I usually preach 3 times a day, but on Sunday I preach for 4 or 5 times.
How many days in the week?
6 days a week. During the last winter, 7.
Oh, you're a fool, sir. You're a fool. You're killing yourself.
There's so much to be done, Sir Andrew. So much to be done.
And Dwight Moody continued his great work 7 more years. Then, while speaking at a meeting in Kansas City in 1899, he was stricken with illness and could not finish the sermon. Tears filled the eyes of many in the congregation as they saw their beloved preacher helped off the platform. He was sent home to Northfield and there gradually grew worse. On December 22, 1899, Dwight Lyman Moody passed to his rest at the age of 62. He was not an old man, but he had worn himself out for God. 5 years before his death, Moody had told some friends that he wanted no beautiful tombstone saying a lot of nice things about him.
If you think it is true, just write these words. Moody has done what he could.
The eyes of the Lord still run through the whole earth, looking for workers who will do great things for him. He's calling for you. What will your answer be?